right, well, welcome everybody. I thought we'd have people coming out of the rafters tonight, but thanks for braving the rain and coming out anyway. And I also thought we had plenty of people online, but so far we don't. But we'll see how it goes. All right. First item of business is to approve our minutes, send out the minutes. Hopefully everybody read the minutes, and we'll go from that point. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes? So moved. Thank you, Patrick. Any discussion, any questions, any clarifications? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes? Aye. Terrific. Approved. Anybody opposed? Unanimous. Love it. All right. Moving right along. Sergeant Garcia.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. All right. I'm gonna keep this super short because I know there's more important issues and more things to discuss tonight. For those that have never met me, I'm Sergeant Garcia. I am with the North Community Engagement Unit. We do, of course, CAC meetings, community meetings, HOA meetings. I haven't been here in a couple of sessions, but that's because schedule conflict. I've sent some of my officers to come out, so hopefully some of y'all have met them. For now, I don't have crime stats due to our crime analyst being on vacation, so don't have that today, but I will get them to you when she gets back, so no worries on that. Any questions, concerns? I know that there's been some issues with the North Hills and the kids with these bikes and the e-bikes. We are creating a enforcement project on it soon to kind of develop and start up in the next couple of weeks, so we're focusing on that. We're going to try to get that under control. Holidays coming up, so I would start emphasizing again, lock your doors, lock your cars, get your valuables out of your cars, especially if you are a gun owner, take them out of your cars. Do not leave them in your cars. I always say second guess yourself. If you're so sure that you lock your cars and every alarm is on, check again. That's usually a good reminder to go back and make sure that your cars are locked. That is our number one headache right now, our car break-ins. And people getting in the cars and taking stuff, seeing valuables in the seats and purses and laptops and wallets. It's easy to forget. I have myself forgotten my wallet in my car, and luckily nothing never happened, but always check behind yourselves. Any questions real quick that I can answer for anyone? I'll stay for a little bit longer.
Yeah, one quick one for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the break-ins at the fairgrounds. Was the guy who had the AR-15 in his vehicle legal?
I don't know. I don't know. Wasn't there. I don't know. Any other questions I can answer? No. I will be in the back in case anyone has any questions, so you guys can get started with your agenda tonight. So I'll hang around if anyone needs me, okay? Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, we're terrific. We're right on. Oh. Yeah, I have. No, we're good. You can start, Kaylee. Kaylee Walker's gonna start from Kane, and we're eagerly waiting to hear. We're gonna try to run this before we start. We're gonna try to run this like what I consider to be a normal neighborhood meeting. I know there's been an open format, but I prefer this type of neighborhood meeting where everybody can hear what's being presented, everybody can hear what the comments coming back to the audience are. And the only thing I ask is be patient, try to raise your hand if you have something to say after the presentation. We'll try to cover everybody's questions if we can.
Okay, so I think we're just getting that slideshow ready to present full screen. Perfect. All right, so before we get started, I wanted to take a second to introduce our team. I'm Callie Walker with Kane Realty. We also have Jamie Stradler with Parker Co. Michael works with Longleaf, our attorneys, and then Nathan Romberg and Travis Fluitt with Kinley Ford, who are our traffic experts. There's a couple other team members here as well. But each of them brings deep experience in creating places that work well for both residents and visitors, places that are thoughtful, functional, and community oriented. We've also been fortunate to collaborate closely with the city of Raleigh and expert consultants to make sure that everything we're sharing tonight reflects sound planning principles and the city's long-term vision. I want to acknowledge that everyone here might come with a different level of background and familiarity with this project. Some of you have been following it for months. Others may be joining the conversation for the first time. So we're going to start with some basic context just to make sure we're all working from the same shared understanding. That way, as we get into the details, everyone has the same foundation. I also want to emphasize that this is a professional process. Our team does this work every day, planning, designing, and managing mixed-use environments that serve our communities well. We care deeply about doing this right and about being good neighbors, and we've worked hard to demonstrate that over the past 25 years. We know these topics spark strong opinions, and that's completely understandable. This is your neighborhood. What we ask is that we keep the conversations respectful and productive so that everyone can be heard and we can make real progress together. If you'll move on to the next slide. Great, it works. North Hills has always been a community built on balance between live, work, and play. And this rezoning request was inspired by how we've watched the community interact with our spaces. Whether it's families enjoying Midtown Park on a weekend morning or friends meeting in the half-acre plaza at the main district expansion before dinner at Village Tavern RH. We love seeing people come together in the spaces that we create. This rezoning request does not increase the amount of development we're allowed, but it redistributes that density to make smarter use of the space that we already have. The goal is simple: to create more public and walkable spaces while maintaining the same total density that is currently allowed today. We're planning for the next 10 to 20 years and beyond, not for immediate construction, and looking toward the future of a growing Raleigh. Go advance. This is not a request for more, it's a request for better, allowing us to adjust height and shape, but not overall size of these buildings. By going taller in limited areas, we can open up more space at the ground level, creating parks, plazas, and pedestrian-friendly zones like those that we enjoy in North Hills today. In planning for this rezoning request, we looked at precedent developments from around the country and even internationally to help us understand what's working in today's cities. Mixed-use districts offer a lot of benefits to their surrounding communities, locating more everyday needs in one place so visitors, employees, and residents alike can spend less time in the car and more time getting things done or home with their families. When the focus is on the ground plane with open space and active retail, the experience becomes about how you use the space more than how tall the building is. Growing up in Atlanta, I'm intimately familiar with how urban sprawl can negatively impact cities, and I know that intentionally locating density can push that sprawl up rather than out. Concentrating density here in North Hills supports walkability, sustainability, and transit use, which are key city planning goals. Next slide, please. The sites that this case specifically focuses on are 3 infill sites along 6 Forks Road and 1 on Laster Mill. Together, these make up approximately 11 acres, which is less than 10% of North Hills' total land area. I'll now hand things over to Jamie Schradler to talk through more details on the request.
Thanks, Callie. Hey everyone, thanks so much for being here with us tonight, and thanks to those we recognize from some of the community meetings we've had already. I know some of this might be a little bit of repeat, but we want to make sure that we do a thorough explanation about how we're going to translate that intent, basically creating a better ground floor plane that Callie described, and looking at how you deliver these mixed-use centers throughout the city, but also in this very unique place of North Hills. And so taking it from the site overview where we're talking about trying to create those ground floor spaces like you see outside of the RH building and these like wide expanses where people can gather. The only way to create those spaces is really to be able to take that area that you would have had building and go further up. And so I'm going to go through a couple of the comprehensive plan guidance that we looked at as we translated that intent into a rezoning request. Next slide, please. Okay, so this will go over the current allowance, what we're allowed to do today, the comprehensive plan, what you all as a city have decided is the future of this site, as long as of many other sites throughout Raleigh, and what the community feedback has been. And then I'll start to explain what our conditions are, both existing and that we're proposing and working with staff on. And then Michael Birch will cover the back half of those conditions and really go into some detail and show you some diagrams of how that will play out. Next slide, please. Okay, so taking at what we have today. Today, the sites that Callie mentioned are outlined in yellow. The red that you see there is the existing zoning. So the zoning is what the city has already decided is allowed today. And what they've decided for those 3 parcels on the lower portion, here, and here, we're allowed to do a CX, mixed use, basically commercial mixed use, up to 12 stories with an urban limited frontage. And on this parcel, CX, up to 5 stories with a parking limited frontage. Frontage is just a combination of rules of how the building interacts with the street. And so what that does today is allow the parcels that we're just talking about here, so just these 4 parcels could be developed up to 2.9 million square feet. That's what we could do today, and that's what the city's own program indicates is allowed today. Now, of course, if you've ever been to North Hills, you know that it's not completely built out, although we're allowed to go to 12 stories throughout. We haven't done that. RH is only 3 stories, there's several buildings that are only 5. In fact, only one of those residential buildings on Lassiter is actually up to 12. But the way the Raleigh code works is kind of an overall form-based code. So you think about a big block of ice of what the ultimate build out could be, and then you can kind of chip away at it as you add conditions, and often it doesn't come completely delivered around that full block. So the next slide shows the comprehensive plan guidance. And the reason this is relevant is that when anyone looks to do a rezoning in Raleigh, you look at what the guidance has already been adopted. So the city has already adopted a rule book about this thick of what they like to see on all future sites. And it's a combination of different types of plans that all kind of inform one another. No single zoning is consistent with everything. But what you try to do is you look at the big picture and make it as consistent as you can, because that policy has been adopted by the people throughout the city. And then you kind of look at where you can make transitions and edges depending on these small area guidance. So for these particular parcels, the future land use map that's already been adopted indicates that this is a regional mixed use. There's only 4 areas in the entire city that have this designation. That includes Crabtree area, that includes Briar Creek and Triangle Town Center, all areas where we expect a mix of commercial and residential and office uses, not only today, but to densify as the city grows. It includes high density housing, office, hotel, and region serving retail uses. So we're talking about enough regional attraction to draw people in from other areas in the city. We expect that, we attract that, we've already adopted a plan that wants to invite more of that density. And so that's where we want to see more people living and working and shopping. As a result, the CX, commercial mixed use, is a recommended zoning district. The next slide shows the urban form map. The urban form map also has these different designations throughout the city, and that also indicates where the city and people have already decided where growth should happen. Our particular designation is called a city growth center. There's only 7 of those throughout the entire city of Raleigh. 3 of them are around 540. So if you look at the other 4, they're all around nodes on the Beltline. Why is that? Well, when we want people to be able to come and stay and shop and eat and work, we want to place it in an area that can attract that kind of density, attract those kind of mix of services, have them park once and be able to walk around, eat at the RH Center, but also sit out on the plaza or the lawn and not have to get back in their car or drive out to Triangle Town Center or drive out to Briar Creek. They can do all of their services in one area. And so when the city adopted the urban form map, they looked at these areas and said, this is where we want to place people next to infrastructure, next to utilities, so that we're not creating more sprawl. But we're only going to do it in 7 places throughout the city, and this happens to be one of them. Some of the other guidance includes a frequent transit area, urban thoroughfare. What this means is basically there's certain areas where we want to kind of funnel folks to be able to get in and out of places easier. That happens to be along 6 Forks Road, a transit emphasis corridor, and where we want to see transit expanding in the future. So again, all signals point to this is where we want more people to live, work, and play. The next slide goes through some additional specific area guidance. So remember when I said there's a rule book this big of different policies that apply throughout the city? Well, some of those policies apply on a small area basis. And this small area plan is called the Midtown Small Area Plan. Some of you I know were active in having communications and meetings to get that adopted. That was adopted in 2020. And what that did is say, okay, look at the big comprehensive plan policies. Now have some specific policies that only apply in the Midtown area. It doesn't just apply to North Hills, it applies throughout the area with the exchanges and down into the waterfront district. But we've highlighted several policies that do apply in this area and inform how we thought about our zoning request. And the reason I'm explaining all this is that this is what we have to do when we're thinking about asking the city to change its rules. What have the people already decided? What has council already approved? And how can we make our request more in line with that? And so when we look at the big comprehensive plan, again, clearly where we want people, clearly where we want to put more jobs and housing, But what does the Midtown plan say about this area? Well, there's several policies, and the ones that are relatively relevant here are land use and transitions, the first one. Height will transition gradually from lower scale residential areas to denser mixed use areas. See the map to the right for more guidance. So it's a little hard to see on here, but most of the areas designated 20 stories in this area, the recommended guidance, with some of these areas kind of stepping down as you get closer to single family residential. Again, it's a guidance policy, it's not necessarily a rule, but there's policies suggesting that the greater height should be in this area and then taper down as you get further towards Lassiter and eventually Raleigh. The Midtown height policy recommends appropriate building height ranges, but it says if a rezoning includes a request for height in the upper half of the range, it should include significant public benefits beyond code requirements such as stormwater mitigation, carbon reduction, expanded or enhanced public space contributions. And so what this plan says, basically that was adopted in 2020, is that these are the recommended heights, but if you go over that, then we'd like you to offset with some things that are benefits to the public. And so everything that Callie went through and talking about the intent of trying to provide these public spaces and open areas for people to enjoy more sunlight and air is exactly what the plan expects us to do. If we're going up higher, then we need to provide more public space. We need to provide more stormwater infrastructure. Those are examples, but they're examples that come straight from the policy. And the other Midtown zoning policy, now there's several, but we've kind of highlighted some of the most relevant, and says that it should be consistent with the area specific guidance on the map to your right. If it's not, it should be deemed consistent if there are significant public benefits beyond code requirements, and again repeats the stormwater mitigation, carbon reduction, and expanded public space recommendations. Well, all three of those suggestions align exactly with our intent to create these great public spaces, to expand and do more of what we've done with the RH space. And so that's what we're looking to do, to translate that into the zoning request. So the next slide takes all of that kind of background information, and then based on our 2 community meetings, we kind of cataloged what the feedback was, presenting some of these ideas and diagrams and understanding what people thought. We had 2 open houses, one was in July, one was just last week, and they were well attended. The one last week was on site, so we were able to actually see some of these public spaces that we're trying to emulate. And as you can see, the feedback was not all just one issue, not all just one concern, not all just one question. It really kind of varied. But in the first open house, we talked about building height, traffic, and trying to support more of this mixture of uses that people have come to know and love. We had heard from a lot of people that moved specifically to North Hills because it was already a thriving center and wanted to see more of that. Some of the other concerns were a little more varied. You can see they're a little fractured along the edge. But in the second open house, we again heard about traffic, we heard about the open space amenities, building height appeared again, and talking a little bit more about the safety and traffic and pedestrian issues. There's, in addition, it might be the electric bike issue, I'm not sure, but there's of course people concerned about how you get from the one node to the other, how you cross over Six Forks. And so we explained a little bit about that, and we have our traffic engineers here that can talk about that as well as we move through the zoning process. So taking all of that, the big comprehensive guide, comprehensive plan guidance, the small area plan, the feedback that we heard from constituents like you, we put together the zoning request and we've submitted it through the city. It's still in staff review, so it's not final. We're still talking with the staff about some consistent policies, but eventually we will go to both the planning commission, who will make a recommendation, and then on the city council for a final decision. And so in the next slide, we'll talk about how we put that request together, what we've already committed to, and then some things that we're thinking about committing to. Those things are called conditions. We don't have to do them, but we're doing them voluntarily to try to make the plan more consistent with what the constituents have already endorsed. So I'm gonna go over the base district and the beginning of the conditions. So the first, next slide, sorry, thank you. So the first kind of choice we make is, what is our base district? Well, the guidance all says CX, and that's what we stuck with. Each of the sites will have a CX, a commercial mixed use designation, with different heights to line up with what the comprehensive plan suggests. So this node over here, the Six Forks nodes, we've gone with a 40-story height designation. You'll recognize that that's adjacent to the Six Forks transit emphasis corridor that I mentioned. It's also adjacent to a 36-story tower, the eastern that already exists today. But we're conditioning that down to 37 to try to make sure that we're being kind of congruent with what's across the street. The main district, which is this node right here, has a designation of 20 stories with conditions. So that was more appropriate to come down further as we get close to the belt line, but recognizing that it's still adjacent to the belt line and can satisfy additional services there. And then the last district site, which is here, Mr. Rowan, conditioned with a 12-story designation. So those are the basics, the designation, the CX, and the height. And then if you go further, we added additional conditions. Next slide, please, thanks. We've added these additional conditions. Now, the first several are existing conditions that we've already submitted to the city, and the remaining are things that we're considering and kind of evaluating with the city. The first thing we did to try to make sure we responded to concerns in the area and were consistent with the comprehensive plan is that we limited our density to our current allowance. Remember when I said that the city would already allow us to build 2.9 million square feet here? That's what we have limited ourselves to do. So we're not doing more, to Callie's point. We're just doing the same amount we could do, but we're doing it better. We're doing it in a way that's consistent with the Midtown plan. The second is prohibited uses. The commercial mixed use adds a variety of different uses. Not all of them are appropriate for this type of center, and so we've included those bans on uses in our request. We've included the height increase to create the ground floor space. So remember when I was talking about how Callie's intent of trying to get more open ground floor space so that people could use that space and kind of offset some of the impacts of the mixed use center. The only way to do that is to take that building footprint and stack it up. So if you think about a can of Play-Doh, it's the same amount of material, but you're taking it from the ground plane and pulling it up so you can create a ground floor space. Building setbacks and height, setbacks on Rowan Street. Michael Burks is just going to go through that and explain that with some diagrams. We've included a build to and parking requirements to mimic frontage. Remember I said frontage is kind of that package of things of how the building interfaces with the street. We couldn't put that on the request, but we've added some limitations to make that ground floor feel a little more comfortable. And then we talked about the Midtown plan, right? So we're including green stormwater infrastructure, carbon reduction and green building certificate standards, guaranteed ground floor public space with enhanced amenities. Remember that policy that talked about the public space. And then we're also including a fire department donation, and Michael will go into the details of that. That was based on requests and discussions with the fire department and some public safety needs that they had and that we were willing to accommodate. So I'll go through the first couple of those and talk about the density caps, and I'll turn it over to Michael. Okay, so we talked about the uses prohibited, we talked about the heights, the development intensity maximum. So this is something that I think, you know, there's two things we talk about that don't sound like they make sense, but they actually do pan out. One, we're not building any more than we could today. And two, the traffic, that means that the traffic is not going to increase any more than it could today if we built us out completely. And I'm not going to cover traffic, Nathan will do that. But explain the current entitlement. So remember I said 2.9 million could be built today. We've added a limitation on ourselves saying we will build no more than 2.9 million square feet. It could be a combination of any of these things: 2,521 dwelling units, 1.6 million of office or medical, and 263,000 of commercial. So personal service, restaurant and bars, retail sales and uses, similar to the type of uses that you see in North Hills today. Where do we get those numbers? We ran them with the city's proprietary software based on what could be done, and we use those numbers to limit ourselves. So that's not stuff we're making up, that's something that the city uses in every zoning request, and we made sure we used those numbers so there was no question. What that means is that we could build all of those to the 12 stories as you could today in these main districts and the 5 stories back there. You'd end up with 2.9 million square feet. We're asking to do just the same, just to make it more enjoyable as a user and have some ground floor spaces to enjoy consistent with the Midtown plan. I'm going to show a diagram with the next slide. It shows what that looks like. Great. So remember when I said zoning is kind of like looking at a big, you know, ice cube block, and then you can kind of pare it down from there. If you just use the maxing out of what we could do at 12 stories and you didn't have any, you know, step backs or step downs or any kind of ground floor space, you'd have these big cubes at 12 stories and then at 5. And the city software spits out, okay, that would fit up to 2,500 homes, or 1.6 million of office, or 263,000 square feet of commercial. And so using those same numbers again, we're limiting ourselves to those things, but look what it does to the ground floor space. All of a sudden, you go up a little bit higher, you have some gathering areas, you have some interesting buildings. It lets us plan buildings that are a better design, and Kane has every incentive to do something that's gonna attract the right type of retail, the right type of office space, but do it in a way that the public expects today, which is an active ground floor area where you can hang out, you can work remotely, you can read, you can toss the Frisbee, you can get an ice cream with your kids in a way that's really made North Hills much more successful than the old traditional way of a shopping center or you drive up and you park and you leave. We've seen that be successful and we want to continue that success while delivering significant public benefits to you in new places to gather, safe place to send your kids to hang out, and places where you want to work, you want to live. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Michael Birch to go through the more particulars of the actual conditions that we're considering. These are existing conditions we've already committed ourselves to. The next set of conditions are things that we're considering and would like to add to the case and welcome feedback. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. Again, Michael Birch with Longleaf Law Partners here with the Kane team. So as Jamie mentioned, I'm going to focus my comments on some of the zoning conditions that we've been discussing with city staff that address both how the buildings relate to the street, so kind of that public realm area, as well as conditions that focus on those public benefits that are mentioned in the Midtown Area Plan Consistency Policy. So the first slide up here regulates kind of how the buildings relate to the street along Rowan. So in that Lassiter district, kind of our northern boundary across from St. Timothy's. So, and here's a diagram that attempts to show one way that these things can be accommodated. So first, prohibiting on-site kind of surface parking between the building and the street. And along with that, a minimum setback of a building of at least 15 feet. Now that 15 feet is measured from kind of the edge of right-of-way, which right now is already on the backside of the sidewalk. So if you're familiar with Rowan, travel lanes, the curb, you've got a planting strip, then you have a sidewalk. There's a little area beyond that, and that's where that 15 feet would then start into the site. So that's the closest a building could be along Rowan. And consistent with the building that's just west there, as you move towards Pamlico, we're prohibiting that surface parking between the building and the street to make that area more pedestrian friendly. Setbacks. This is kind of requiring the building at some point above the second story to step back, in this case, at least 12 feet, again, above the second story. Again, that will kind of provide that relief, that building form transition to the school and the neighborhood to the north and northwest. The UDO doesn't require step backs for buildings allowed in this district. And so again, we've added a condition that kind of goes above and beyond what the UDO requires. Next slide. So frontages and streetscapes we'll kind of speak to on this slide, on this side, kind of in that main district area, as well as the North Hills expansion portions, where the property fronts along Lassiter Mill Road and Six Forks. So Lassiter, for the area along Lassiter Mill Road, again, no surface parking between the building and the street, similar to what you have along a large portion of Lassiter Mill, really till you get to the kind of Wells Fargo Exxon area. Since the last case came through in 2021, 2022, the code has changed and been updated to require more and safer pedestrian and bike infrastructure. So now, along Lassiter Mill and along Six Forks, the city requires both a sidewalk and a separate bike lane above the curb, so separated from the vehicular travel lanes, along with a planting strip and a buffer between the sidewalk and the bike lane. So that is now required along the frontage, along Lassiter Mill Road and Six Forks. One difference between the two frontages is in the Six Forks area, along Six Forks, we've created a build-to zone. So that's kind of how the distance of the building relative to Six Forks. We said at least 50% of that area along Six Forks has to have a building within that area between 0 and 20 feet. Again, creating that kind of relationship between the building and the pedestrian, making it more pedestrian friendly. So we can go to the next slide. So these next few slides relate to the Midtown area consistency policy, again, which is included down here for reference, where it mentions stormwater mitigation, carbon reduction, and enhanced public space areas. So on stormwater, which is the first one here, in the Lassiter district, we're working on a condition that would require the implementation of what's called green stormwater infrastructure. So that is kind of lower impact ways of dealing with stormwater. And we've committed to treating 15% of the volume of water that the city requires us to treat and detain. Second bullet point here is a commitment to meet the design criteria of the kind of green building certifications. We've got a list of options for those different certification parties that review these things. The most well-known is LEED, but there are also Energy Star, Green Globes, and other certification programs. And so we've committed to any apartment building, any mixed-use building, any kind of general office building will meet those standards, and we'll certify that to the city. So you've heard both from Callie and from Jamie kind of the vision and really the impetus for this request is to allow for taller buildings, accommodating the same amount of development intensity, but doing so in order to provide kind of enhanced ground level open space areas that benefit not just the residents or office tenants of this area, but the general public. And so not just words, but we've put these kind of rules in place as part of our conditions submitted to the city. And they're focused on two areas. So first I'll speak to the Lassiter district. Again, that is that area up against Rowan. They're committed to 10,000 square feet of that public open space at the ground level. For context, that area is about 2.95 acres. The code would require about just under 13,000 square feet of amenity area. Now, 50% of that, only 50% of that has to be accessible kind of to the pedestrian at the ground level. So a requirement for about 6,500. And so this represents, an increase of that up to 10,000 square feet at the ground level. On the Six Forks sites, so on the south side of Lassiter Mill, we've imposed a standard for 30,000 square feet of kind of that public open space at the ground level. In the Six Forks and Lassiter district area is about 4.1 acres. And so that translates to a requirement just of the code of just under 18,000 square feet. Again, only 50% of that has to be at the ground floor. So call it 9,000 or so. We have tripled that to provide 30,000 square feet at the ground level. Again, it's kind of putting the vision into a commitment that would be a zoning condition. Next slide. So As to kind of the fire department, we have been working both with the city manager's office, the fire chief and his staff on kind of discussing some of their needs. As y'all know, Fire Station 9 is there at the intersection of Six Forks and Rowan. So the city recently completed their kind of citywide fire master plan. And the recommendations for Station 9 are set forth here. So for each station they looked at, relocate or rebuild. For Station 9, they identified to relocate. The reasons for that relocation recommendation is that the station itself, the building, is at its end of life. The second reason is that the lot is too small and doesn't make sense to rebuild there on that property to accommodate the type of equipment that they want to have to service the Six Forks area, as well as the area inside the belt line where there are taller buildings planned as well. So as part of those discussions with the fire chief, et cetera, we have committed and putting in zoning conditions, working with the city to donate to the city for the use, of the fire department, an amount of $400,000. We think that that donation gives the fire department and the city the most flexibility, whether they want to use that in terms of acquiring property. Again, from a relocation standpoint, they have considered and continue to look at sites both north along Six Forks and south along Six Forks into just south of the belt line. So it could be used for that property acquisition. It could also be used for equipment. They've identified needs for equipment. And so it's really giving them the flexibility on how to use that money. How we came up with the $400,000 donation, we looked at the value of the land that we had offered the fire chief in the city, about 1/10 of an acre immediately adjacent to their existing lot, if that would help them rebuild and expand their building at that location if they wanted to. The feedback that we've gotten from the chief is that that's still not enough land area that they would want to accommodate their vision for that station. And so that's why we've put that into a donation. Next slide. All right, and I'll turn it over to Nathan.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Everybody, Nathan Romberg with Kinley Horn and Associates. I just have a couple of quick slides on kind of traffic transportation. So the first slide, all highlighting just some existing transit connections kind of in and around North Hills. We continue to investigate kind of future stop locations that would kind of be good for the entire public, primarily looking at locations maybe along Lassiter Mill. It's always a little difficult at this stage to nail down exactly where a future stop would make the most sense, as kind of very early in the project stage. We just want everyone to be aware that that continues to be a very important topic, and we continue to kind of dig into details on where we can try to provide more reliable and better connectivity kind of for transit service. You can go to the next slide for me. Thanks. And just a quick slide on traffic. I know some of you have seen kind of the daily traffic numbers on the boards at the two neighborhood meetings. Just want to quickly note, we've updated these to 2025. Those recently were published by the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Maybe just a quick blurb on what this number is saying. This number doesn't speak to what someone experiences during a peak hour or on a certain day. This is attempting to average out over an entire year on an average day the total volume experienced on a certain point of either Six Forks or Lassiter. So that number could apply. Its point is you could apply that to January, you could apply that to July, November. It's just a way to try to put a big picture, kind of look at how much traffic is moving through a particular area on a given day. So you'll see if we do a 20-year comparison from 2005 to 2025 on Six Forks and Lassiter Mill, you're seeing either no growth in daily average volume or some, small to moderate growth on Lassiter Mill. I think this is about a 7% increase over a 20-year time period. And just one other quick note, I know y'all heard this a bunch from everybody else already, but as far as traffic in the rezoning case, as Jamie mentioned, we say no traffic increase. That's not us trying to say traffic will not grow by future development. It just means as we look at what's currently allowed, there's a certain amount of traffic that could be generated based on 2.9 billion square feet of development. There's trip generation data that tells us what that could be. And then it's still 2.9 million, and the trip generation data doesn't care whether it's 2.9 million over 30 stories or 10, it's still 2.9 million square feet. So that's kind of why we keep making that point of there would be traffic generated, it's just not a net change based on purely a height. So I just want to make sure I made that point again, but those should be my 2 slides, I believe. Don't know who's next, or is that it?
I'll close us out.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, everyone. So at its core, this proposal is about quality over quantity, creating better, more intentional spaces with the same limits that already exist. We're not asking for more development, we're asking for the flexibility to design it smarter so it serves people better. The intent of our proposal is rooted in what we've learned from how the community already uses and enjoys North Hills, places where people gather, connect, and feel at home. And we've worked with the city and the community to craft these conditions, those that we've already committed to and those newer ones that we are open to discuss with you, that respond to those concerns that we can address within a rezoning case. While noting, like Nathan said, that traffic impacts will be addressed at site plan. So those counts that Nathan was mentioning that get generated, those will be calculated at each site plan for the projects, meaning that once we know whether it's office or residential, we'll do the math and understand at the site plan level what each project needs to accomplish to support its traffic impacts. By thoughtfully redistributing density, we can open up the ground plane for what truly matters: walkable streets, green space, and vibrant public areas. The conditions we've proposed, from green infrastructure and carbon reduction to public space commitments, reflect our responsibility to do this well. This is a continuation of North Hill's story, evolving thoughtfully to meet Raleigh's future while honoring what people already love about it. The most successful mixed-use communities prove that when density is placed intentionally, it supports sustainability and livability. We're applying those same lessons here, concentrating growth where infrastructure, transit, and activity already exist so we can help Raleigh grow up and not out. This is long-term planning for a more connected, resilient, and people-centered city. Our team takes pride in being thoughtful stewards of this place and good neighbors in the process. We're professionals who do this work every day, and our goal is to keep working with the community, listening, sharing, and refining as we go. Thank you for engaging with us tonight. Your input helps make North Hills and Raleigh as a whole a stronger, more vibrant community, and we're happy now to take your questions.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I just have one question and I'm here to listen. For the public, for clarification, along 6 Forks, we know the frontage on 6 Forks, but the buildings that are there, for example, Coquette, the Edible Bakery, and then you have REI. Right now, it's a very lonely, what we call a single loaded corridor.
Yes.
It's just a building face with parking. Will that now become a public space, either with public space adjacent to it? So it's not a parking field with these lonely buildings on the edge. I was trying to see back at your other image about the massing. So can you talk about the interior part of that parcel with, you know, the edible art and Coquette, and then further down with REI? Yeah, there it is. So it seems like there's gonna be more open space there, correct?
Yes, so
Okay.
this green space right here, that is where we're committing to that 30,000 square feet of ground floor public space. So you're exactly right, this existing retail would now front out onto
Okay.
public space. And similar idea here, though most of the public space would be in front of that kind of Coquette edible art building, we would do the same thing across the street from REI as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so those would become more like internal streets like we have in the existing North Hills expansion today.
Kelly, can I just, while you're on that same topic, on the Rowan node, last node, I guess it is, that same question where you have an establishment of a lot of stores.
Mhm.
But it looks like to put the building 20 stories, I think, would get you pretty close to the stores that are currently there, like the pharmacy. Are they gonna stay there or are they gonna be replaced?
So that's a great question, and just to clarify, the last node, we're asking for 12 stories there. So like I mentioned when I opened us up, we're talking about 10, 20 plus year planning. None of this is immediate construction that would happen tomorrow. We have no immediate plans for any of our existing businesses to go away. That said, eventually, yeah, this construction would be on those sites, but if you look at examples like Ruth Chris, we put them back in the exact same location that they were before, and we would certainly be open to do that with our partners and these retailers that would be affected. We love our North Hills retailers. They're what make North Hills the incredible place that it is. So they may go away temporarily and they may come back. But just wanna emphasize that this is not immediate, groundbreaking that's gonna happen as soon as rezoning goes through. This is multi-year future planning.
Okay. From that picture. Now at the Lassiter, you talk about 10,000 or more extra feet. Is that in addition to what's there now, or is that include what's there now, like in front of restoration hardware?
So this would be the Lassiter district
I'm
here.
sorry, the one down on Lester Mill Road.
Oh, down here? So the ground
That's
floor.
restoration hardware.
Yeah, so so this is restoration hardware here. The ground floor we're emphasizing are these two, because this is already such a healthy, and large public plaza. We envision this building kind of really completing the square and interacting with that plaza.
So
But that-
we're adding more open space.
There would be open space added, compliant with the UDO, just no additional commitment within the rezoning. So what Michael mentioned that the UDO already requires a certain percentage of open space for each developable parcel. That would apply here, it's just we're not committing to an additional open space, in rezoning conditions.
Right, so you're getting the benefit of UDO requirement plus this large plaza and then the public patio that's on the second floor of the 400 tower there. So it's kind of a belt and suspenders, the existing one we serve plus what the UDO would require.
Again, to follow up on that, I don't see any step back, since that'll be right across from the neighborhoods on the other side of Lassiter. Have you considered having a step back, same as you had to do further up on Lassiter?
We looked at it, the step, as you know, the code will require a step back at the 12th floor. And so we looked at that being kind of the right amount of transition for now, but something we're continuing to listen to. Yes, sir.
So in the original 2.9 million square feet that you're allowed and that you plan on doing with higher heights, it's residential, office, and retail, basically. Does the 2.9 million also include the square footage required for parking?
All the parking would have to be captured within what we were building, so whether that's, and those, those haven't been designed yet, but they would basically be either already existing on site. So for example, there's a large parking structure under here, might not need additional parking there, but it would depend on what those uses are and how close we had to build the parking to it.
So the 2.9 does or does not include square footage dedicated to parking?
The calculations used for those residential units, office square feet, and retail square feet are the actual uses themselves, so they do not include parking, but we will build enough parking to support that square footage.
Okay, and how much will that be for 2.9 million?
It depends on what the uses are, so residential, for example, has a much less intense parking need than office does per square foot, so we can't answer that today because we don't know what the uses will be for these future buildings.
And who will determine that you're building enough parking spaces?
That's a great question. The city no longer has minimum parking requirements for its development, so it's really on us as like the good stewards and the developer and the designers and our very intelligent traffic engineers to help us calculate how much parking is required to support the uses, but it's really in our best interest to make sure that our residences or offices or retailers are supported by enough parking for the people that live there, work there, go there. So that's kind of how that happens. And also from a financial perspective, we have to provide it because our equity partners and debt providers will require it of us as well.
Yeah, the neighborhood is definitely going to want to see adequate parking created, because when the Lassiter shopping center was redone, people using it were parking on Pamlico and on Rowan, and the neighbors weren't happy that suddenly there was just a phalanx of cars going up and down those two streets. So I think that's a big question, and if you could come back to us with like the formula that would be used and your best guess at how you're gonna divide up residential, office, and retail at this point in time per building, I think that would be very useful information.
Yeah, I think the best we can do on that is provide what the market ratios would support. So Kane's been doing this for a long time and will know kind of, in order to lease an apartment, what a typical tenant would want. In order to lease an office space, what a typical tenant would require in order to sign that lease. But we don't have specific program at this point for each of those buildings, but when we go in for site plan, there will be a specific program that says, okay, you use this much for office, and here's exactly how many parking spots that we're going to provide, and how that will all fit with everything else. So we can provide the ratios and.
Yeah, so the ratios are in a market like North Hills, and what we do today is 1.25 parking spaces per residential unit. That math is done by the majority of our residences are either studios or 1-bedrooms. So then that additional quarter per unit accounts for the 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms that have multiple cars per unit. Office is typically around, this is certainly a range, but it's typically around 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet of office space. And then retail depends on the use, whether it's a service, a fast casual restaurant, a fine dining restaurant, but it can be from anywhere from 3 spaces per 1,000 square feet to 9 spaces per 1,000 square feet.
Okay, I know there's a couple, I want to respect your follow-up, but I know there's a couple people that are waiting, so perhaps we could get other folks.
Can we assume the parking will be underground?
Parking will either be underground or captured within the building footprints themselves. It'll probably be a combination. Again, we don't have these buildings designed. This is about long-term planning. But if you were to press me to tell you today, I would say that here and here will likely be underground, and then this would be a combination of underground and structured.
Go ahead.
Is that something that you can put into conditions? Because right now, like in the Lassiter, the Alexan apartments, that parking is all contained inside and hidden from view to the outside neighborhood. But over across the street on Sixth Fork, there are those tall office towers that now have 8 or 10 levels of parking, which, you know, make noise and you know, and gas, fumes and that kind of thing, which people near in the neighborhood aren't gonna wanna see, you know, in your 12-story building.
So those are built under the prior version of the code. Did you want to?
Yeah, Michael can speak to the parking requirements, because there are really stringent parking screening requirements and things that talk about what happens at the street level, which you experience, you know, from the sidewalk or homes adjacent.
Yeah, what they said. So North Hills East, right, across Six Forks, is subject to a planned development master plan, originally approved in 07, added on to in 16 that gets you down to the NHID. So that whole development is subject really to its own set of rules, all of which predate the city's parking decks, you know, lighting and screening standards that were adopted in probably 22. So the current rules and what would apply to any of this development is much more stringent than there. Both, as Callie mentioned, screening, building materials on the ground floor as well as upper stories, minimum heights of those walls to prevent headlights from being shown across, also not being able to actually see the source, the point source of lights, as well as limited amounts of openings, right, so folks much harder time looking in and the types of screening materials. So the code much more stringently regulates that now and really hasn't been applied to anything in the North Hills area.
Let's keep going.
So related to that, where are you going to offer access and egress for all the cars that are gonna park in your building's lot? Are they gonna come in off of Rowan, or are they gonna come in from the parking area on the Lassiter Shopping Center right now? Because past buildings over there, the parking access faces houses. So does the dumpster and the loading dock. So I would like to see, can you point to where you expect your loading dock to be and your parking access and egress on that building on on Lassiter.
We're not planning on a vehicular connection to Lassiter, but all of those, the exact location of all those things would be determined at site plan.
Yeah, that's another kind of, you have to, the process works that you have to get through rezoning before you can then design the building, and so it's really hard to answer any of those questions today.
Well, can you put it in your conditions that it will not face Rowan? Neither the loading dock nor the dumpsters, nor the parking access and egress. That-
Certainly something.
Put that in a condition, it will not face Rowan.
That's certainly something we can consider.
Well, and then when can you come back and let the neighborhood know?
Well, I mean, this is all part of the public process, so we'll be, the next step would be going to planning commission where we have to finalize our conditions in advance, and then eventually going on to the city council. So there's our case planner and the head of long range planning is here. You can follow along on the case and kind of see those updates as they occur. And that's the best way to kind of figure out what our updated conditions are. I think before we go to planning commission, we're happy to share, Larry, what those final conditions are with you and your welcome to share.
City website has the planning commission on November 12th.
Looks like that's what it's going to be. And that won't be, I think, officially noticed for maybe another week, but we're trying to finalize our conditions and get feedback from you all and from all of the city staff folks that have to respond before we say it's ready to go. Yes, sir.
What guarantees do we as residents have that you will meet your conditions?
So conditions are legally enforceable by the city of Raleigh. So if Callie tries to turn in a building permit and has no public space on the ground floor, she won't get a permit. They'll go through review. She won't even get the site plan approved without that. So each site plan, the city will look back at the zoning conditions and we have to prove that we are satisfied with them. So it's not just a.
Strange, there's supposed to be a library up here in North Hills,
On this particular property.
somewhere around here. The Cardinal area is, yeah. When they first started doing all this development. So why should we trust you?
Well, part of this process is trusting that when we have these legally enforceable conditions, that the city is maintaining them, and they do that regularly. There's people that are employed to make sure that those are carried through. I don't know if there's a certain condition you want to talk about.
No, yeah, I could speak to North Hills East, having worked on both the original and the expansion. I imagine that a library was one of the allowable uses allowed within that North Hills East master plan. There are a lot of allowable uses over there. Ma'am,
There
sorry.
was money set aside for that. A bond was voted on, if I'm not sure.
You are correct.
And then where did that money go? We're getting nothing out of this. You're taking our fire station. It's gonna be God knows where, because you built these nasty big buildings that we don't have the fire trucks for. And you're offering 1/10 of an acre or $400,000. You can't even get a lot in North Hills for $600,000. I mean, we're losing our pharmacy, our gas station, and then we're getting traffic. We can see all these nasty things happening that, we can't afford to shop at Restoration Hardware, which you've referred to so many times. I can't afford to eat there. I mean, there's very little that I can do in North Hills, except it's just I have to go around it. And the traffic has already just totally come into our neighborhoods. So, I mean, we'd like to see something that we're getting out of this.
Yeah, that's a great point. I just want to follow up on a couple of things. So first of all, we are not forcing the fire department out of anything. They adopted a master plan.
And they have to
in
have
July.
a place so they can serve you. That's the deal.
Can I
But we're
finish
fine.
explaining? Because I think it's really important to just clarify that the fire department hired a consultant. He made the determination that Station 9 should be relocated long-term. That's not a decision that we have any power to make, and we're not forcing them out by any means. The land that we offered was in collaboration with years of working with the fire staff in the past, and trying to help them understand what type of land they would need for a ladder truck and how that would work. The station downtown, just near Nash Square, is only 0.37 acres. And they're able to use a ladder truck there, and they're able to figure out to serve all of the 40-story zonings that are around that area and the 33-story PNC tower. So it's not us that's forcing it out. They already have the 36-story Eastern across the street that they are they are obligated to serve. What we're trying to do is make sure that we give them the flexibility to be able to continue operations on the site and buy additional equipment if they wish. Now, remember, we're only a very small fraction, 10% of North Hills is what we're offering to change in this request, and we're only a portion of the entire fire service area. So when we're talking about the service area for Station 9, it's not just North Hills, it's a very, very large area. But what we're trying to do is offer more than our pro rata share to offset their costs in terms of acquiring other land, like Michael suggested, or if they wish to purchase vehicles or other equipment. And so we're doing more than our part to try to contribute to that. And in exchange, what we're trying to do is not only offer that as public benefit, but offer all the ground floor space that we were talking about earlier that's very well attended. And I understand you might not care for it, but we're trying to follow the comprehensive plan and provide the best we can for the most people. Yes, sir.
I'm glad the fire, because I have is there a location decided?
I don't want to speak for the fire chief, but the
So we
city,
don't know.
well, the city is, I encourage you to speak with planning or with fire directly. The city is evaluating several different options. We explored making some of those options part of this case, and where we collectively landed was that this donation would leave the most flexibility to pursue those options and give council options of how they want to pursue funding.
Because just to add to the relevance of the question is because you do have the cardinal there. We do have a lot of seniors that live in Quail Hollow, that live in North Hills, and fire trucks are 9 out of 10 the first on the scene. So if you eliminate that speedy access, then I'm not sure, because we have some speed mitigation already in our neighborhood, so we're already slowing down the trucks, and they're typically the first to respond. So if they get displaced too far away, I'm just kind of concerned that there
Just
might
for
not be a quick
clarification,
response.
part of every station, they have to measure response time. They're required, and so when we do annexations, it gets more difficult if they're within, I believe, 7 minutes maybe, but there's a certain time. And so they draw these circles to determine how quickly they can be there. If you're building a new fire station, that is part of the equation, otherwise you're handicapping yourself and not being able to service that area as required. So regardless of the site they pick, they gotta make sure they can respond within, there's a whole national standard that requires you to respond within a certain amount of time.
That's awesome.
And the staff is, okay.
Last point, there's always this misnomer about how do you fight high rises. A ladder truck is not gonna fight a 40-story building.
Wait, that's
All
my
modern
concern was my
buildings-
senior neighbors, not the
All
first.
modern buildings have these fireproof
That's
stairwells with standpipes and hoses. And whether I live in New York City, from buildings as tall, that's why they went up the World Trade Center to save people, there are no ladders that go that tall. They do have fire protected stairwells, which is why they encourage you to go through it, concrete, where firefighters will go up the stairwell, and then each floor has basically a hose to extinguish the fire. So let's wanna make sure that a ladder does not,
Yeah.
the only thing you do to fight
I
high
agree with
rises.
that, but if you've lived in North Hills long enough, you've known how many times the fire trucks have gone to Coquette. So any restaurant that's burning grease, you're at risk of needing that fire
Yes.
assistance. It sounds like maybe there is a metric that is
Yeah.
already there.
Yeah, I just wanna be really clear, to Jamie's point, we are not displacing the fire station. The fire station has evaluated their options and has decided that the best course of action for Station 9 is to relocate it.
Long term.
Long term,
9
again,
years.
not tomorrow. When they do that, they will follow all of these really, again, stringent requirements because they're in the business of life safety. They take it very seriously. They will not build a fire station that does not meet those service requirements. They wouldn't be able to get funding for it.
Can I suggest we get a fire chief to actually come to one of these meetings?
Oh.
Which ones, we'd like to hear their side of this too. Yeah, I don't see why we can't have that.
But while we're on the firehouse, though, a couple of things that I just want to make sure. Last time we talked about the rezoning of North Hills, the fire station property had value of about $10 million. Is that correct? City property? That's what you estimated to be back then.
I don't know.
Well, that's the number that kind of stuck to my mind. And the number that sticks in my mind now to create a new fire station is about $11 million. Again, that's That's what I've seen from the reports and whatnot. Take
So
that.
just to explain how we got to the $400,000
That's my
number.
next point.
Yeah, we applied what we think that the market rate for that piece of tenth of an acre property that we would have contributed to the fire station had they wanted it. So the way that we did that math is that you can fit about 100 residential units on an acre of land with this kind of zoning. And those would be valued, that land would be valued at about $40,000 a door. So a tenth,
In this area?
yes. The land.
Smoking something?
But could you?
No, I'm not, please, can you guys let me explain? I'm not talking about a residential home. I'm not talking about a single family detached house. I'm talking about how we value land that has mixed use property on it. I do this for a living. Like, I know how this math is done. I underwrite tons of deals. This is how we do this math. For a high-rise building, you can fit about 100 units on an acre. So call that 10 units on a tenth of an acre times $40,000 a door, which is again, the land, just the dirt, not the building. So that dirt is worth $400,000 as part of a mixed-use development. That is how we.
You're saying 4 million an acre, so it's 4 million an acre.
I'm talking
Right,
about,
it's
yes, this
$4,000
parcel
a tenth of
specifically.
an acre.
Yes,
It's $4 million,
yes,
4 million an acre.
yes.
So what's commercial property in Northfield, what's the $4 million an acre?
That is what commercial property at a 12-story zoning about would cost. Our mixed-use developments take up much more than an acre, so our land values that you see, you know, on TVJ or CoStar or whatever are gonna be much higher than that, because we're talking about 2 and 3 and 8 acres. The Northland expansion site is 8 acres, so yeah, they're gonna be higher numbers than that.
15. And just to follow up on that, so Kelly's right, that's how we came to that decision, but the other reason we came there is that we've spent a lot of time talking with the fire chief and his staff, and if you look at where the fire station is today.
You're gonna be a pro
I'm
in this,
moving it,
idea.
right? If you look where the fire station is today, what we heard through going through this case years ago was that they needed an expanded area, they wanted to be able to maneuver the trucks and get in and out. This configuration is not ideal because they can't just like pull in and out, so even where it's located on Rowan, it's just not ideal for them. However, we had offered, you know, allowing an additional tenth of an acre to accommodate expansion and rebuilding there. We provided them a test fit to show them how their other station, like the station 22, would fit in that configuration. We kind of proved for them, used our own designers, that they could do what they needed to do on 0.67 acres. Now remember I just said that the fire station downtown is on 0.37 acres. So it can be done in a more
Did they ask for
suburban.
anything else? Did they ask, when you said this is what we offer, a tenth of an acre,
Yeah.
here's why it would work for you a lot, what was their reaction? Did they ask for more? Did they?
They
give
did,
more?
they asked for parking and stormwater and we agreed to provide it.
Okay,
and so-
just whatever need, you gave offer them a tenth of an acre and that was enough for them. Did they ask, could you give us 2 tenths? We need 3 tenths, can you do that for us? Kane development, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
Did the
that,
Their
fire
standard-
department ask that?
so
Was there a
last,
negotiation?
last case, the final condition that was acceptable to the fire department was a tenth of an acre, plus we would treat their stormwater and provide parking on our
But
property.
they decided to move it in.
Yes,
Yes.
the,
Well, I mean, the full story on that is that that case went away and we had proposed to do twice as much as we're proposing with this case. The council decided that they didn't want to support that, so we withdrew the request. We came back with what the public asked for, was just build what you can build today, which is 2.9 million acres, or 2.9 million square feet. When we do that, we give up 2,500 additional units that we could have used to pay for our fire station. We give up 1.6 million more office square foot that we could have used to pay for other things.
Thanks.
So by
for
listening
doing
to
that.
the-
We appreciate that. We do.
We listened to the public and we did what was asked, which is limit ourselves, and that just takes away the capability of doing other things. And so what the zoning process looks at is, in addition to the comprehensive plan and the guidance, they look at what's reasonable. What's reasonable given the things that you're putting on yourselves, and given the restrictions we're putting on ourselves, we offer the same amount of land that we'd offered the fire department before, and this time we put a value on it because the land is not what they have in their long range plans. They want to relocate, and so we're giving them the money instead. Yes, ma'am.
There are 2 different points that, one is just well, not minor, but it's important. When you're talking about the public spaces, so many of them are just concrete. I mean, maybe there's a fountain, but it's not actually green earth for people to connect on. And I'm wondering that when you have marked off, that where you were was where I was going. Anyway, is there actual grass or is it like astroturf with more concrete types of things? Because I don't know, I mean, it's nice to have places to stroll and play, but part of, this is such a nature dense, beautiful area, the whole area. And it's like creating environments that completely eclipse that and do away with it, like the RH Plaza. I mean, it's cool if you like a concrete plaza, but you know, it's not exactly.
Let's
Oh,
remember
let's
too
go.
that what was there before was a JCPenney and a parking lot.
Well, I know
So it
what was
wasn't-
there
it-
before. Yeah, it wasn't exactly attractive, but, well, whatever. But the biggest thing, and I'm gonna just say them both at once, so I do wonder, is there gonna be actual, you know, grass and trees and stuff like that? They do that very effectively, like at Waverly Place in Cary. They've made it like a wonderful space to be, because there's actual grass as well as fountains and stuff like that. But the biggest concern I have had coming in here, and that I mean, in the last, no matter how you wanna average out how many trips are being taken on Six Forks and Laster Mill, the on-the-ground experience of living and crossing through there over the last 2 years, it has gone from totally reasonable, maybe you have to wait, you know, for one life cycle, to just crammed 3-4 turns. I mean, I escaped from a megalopolis like 20 years ago. I don't wanna live in one again. And I know what they're like. I watched it become a megalopolis in Washington DC over many, many years, and you know, it destroyed a lot of the character. Of course, there were also some benefits. You know, and it's not all awful. I mean, Ruth's Chris is in much better shape looking now than it was.
Yeah.
But the point for me is the traffic has already become horrendous. And if you have 40 stories of people that are driving their cars in and out of that building, and you have Six Forks, which is already gridlocked, for example, every day, multiple times a day, you know, 9 o'clock at night, you can sail. It's, you know, I have to go 4 miles. It can take me like 25 minutes to go 4 miles from my house down to the other end of Six Forks. And it used not to be that way, and I've been doing it for years, and it was never like this. So the idea of all these towers with more cars, and you're talking about it's pedestrian friendly, but does that always have to include like driving up to the 8th floor of a parking garage? It's like, you can't just go in and park and do your business or have fun or whatever you're gonna do. It's like, I don't see how there's any room for any more cars without massive accommodation on the ground of the streets. And yet, like St. Albans, I know that's not the project you're talking about. St. Albans, you know, there's a ravine, you can't expand the width there.
Yeah.
And that's become awful, and it used to be a great shortcut, you know?
Well, we appreciate your on the ground perspective, and I think to Nathan's point, that's not this character 24/7, right? There are peak times, there are constraints on the road. I think one of the most interesting things about traffic and transportation is that building wider lanes doesn't necessarily mean more efficient traffic. It's one of those things that seems like it would be the fix, but isn't.
Like maybe
And
having
so-
a bridge so you don't have to stop at all the lights. I mean, I
That
don't
could be
wanna live
something you
here
can
while
petition
a
city
bridge.
council for.
Yeah, I don't wanna live here while a bridge is being built on Six Forks over this outlet.
But that's why the cap on the density is so important. Because today, we could add all of those cars over the next 5 years and build out what the zoning already allows us to do, that additional 1.6 million of office, and create all those trips without any of these public benefits. No guarantees of ground floor space, no donation to the fire department. We wouldn't have to ask the city for any of that permission, we would just submit a site plan, and they would go through their extensive rules and figure out what we were required to do, and only what we were required to do by code is all that would happen. And what we're asking to do here is instead we capped their density, so we can't build one more square foot than we already could today. Which means, to Nathan's point, we can't put one more trip on the roads than we're already allowed to do today. It's not built today, but we could do that today without any of this project, without any of the public benefits.
I
So we're trying to
understand
do
that.
is-
The thing I would like to hear about is, and I don't know anyone who may or may not be familiar, there's a county right outside DC, Arlington County, that completely developed, I mean, you all probably had a hand in some of those projects.
I'm from.
Yeah, okay. So, but that was beautifully designed as it became, I mean, I lived there when they hadn't built the metro yet, right? And we don't have a metro here. There's no, I mean, you're a pedestrian, but you pretty much have to get in the car to go anywhere. You know, you can't jump on the metro. So, but Arlington did a beautiful job of reconfiguring streets, creating new streets, all this stuff. So as that grew up, and it's totally urban density, it works traffic wise, but you go into the district, you know, and you get on the highway things going out, it's
Yeah.
like already getting close to that here.
Think about what Arlington did though, they built up, right?
Yeah, they built up,
Yeah.
but they also planned streetwise, and I'm not hearing plans for streetwise other than, you know, I mean, I appreciate that you're doing offsets that are voluntary, you know, to be a good steward, to be a good neighbor, but what about the traffic? There's
I
not, it's
know
not
this doesn't
addressed.
answer your question about Six Forks specifically, but if you think about what we were able to accomplish within the expansion itself, is we connected street grids that were previously like dead end turnarounds. And I know that's not Six Forks, I know that doesn't solve everything, but we are thinking about those things. And I do think it's gonna take time to like better connect inside of North Hills, which hopefully will take some of the pressure off of the surface streets around it. So I hear your concern, and I wanna reiterate to you, and it sounds like Nathan's gonna say something, that each of these site plans, when we actually have designed the building and we know if it's gonna be apartments or office or retail, we will have to go take our plans to the city, and the city will tell us exactly what's required of us from a code perspective as far as street improvements. I don't know that I've worked on a single project at my time at Kane that hasn't had some sort of off-site improvement triggered by our site plan. And that again is a legal requirement. It's a thing that we have to go do. A great example, because you mentioned St. Albans, is the new stoplight at St. Albans and Hardymont was built and paid for by the St. Albans Lofts project. So we do those kinds of things with all of our projects. And I know it's like hard to see and it takes a long time to happen and you don't feel the effects immediately, but we are thinking long-term about those things and we care deeply about it because we live in the neighborhood. I live 2 minutes down the road. I really care about this stuff. I want North Hills to be awesome. I want to live here for a long time and see it be really successful. And I want to get back to your point about open space too, just to explain one thing really quickly, is the RH Plaza that you mentioned sits on top of structured parking below. So you can imagine how hard it is to grow like real plants on top of concrete. That's why you see the tree beds there stick up out of the ground a little bit. They actually also stick down below the parking deck a little bit to get enough soil volume for those trees to grow. So we'll do creative things like that where we're creating public space on top of structured parking. But I think a good amount of the public space we're talking about, especially in the Lasseter district, will be at grade, meaning it's on dirt and we can actually do more living plants rather than astroturf. However, I will say Midtown Park used to be grass and it got used so much we couldn't keep the grass alive. So that's the other consideration there too. Nathan, did you want to hit on traffic?
Jamie, you're gonna say something, but I can go next, or we just keep going. Yeah, I know it's really tough, you know, every time we're at zoning, it's like, you know, everyone sees the idea, if you could build almost 3 million square feet, of course that's gonna generate traffic. I stood here and said that's not gonna generate a single car. Y'all would probably not let me get home, so, but let me try to explain what happens during site plan stage when, you know, as Callie's talking about plans being submitted. So every single time Callie and team are gonna go submit a site plan to the city, transportation will have the option, pretty much for any reason, to require a traffic impact analysis. And I would have to guess, Callie's not going to say this, they're probably gonna require one every single time a site plan's submitted, especially because we're in North Hill. So I can't guarantee you one's gonna be submitted with every building, but I'm pretty confident that's gonna happen. And in most of these cases, the state, NCDOT, is probably also going to be involved in the process of preparing a traffic impact analysis for every building because of the impact to Six Forks Road. So, and Travis can tell you as well, they're not really in the business of just saying, the state especially is not in the business of saying, yeah, just build your building, we don't care. They very much would want to be interested in seeing kind of what needs to be done to mitigate each individual building at site plan. And, you know, during neighborhood meetings, I've heard a lot about, especially southbound Six Forks during the P and peak. Yeah, this is purely speculation, but a lot of these things can also be attributed to just operational factors. So, you know, signal times and things like that. Perhaps Six Forks is timed really well for northbound progression. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I've done study. And maybe that's harming the southbound movement. Again, these are just things that can be evaluated that don't get looked at a rezone. I'm just trying to say, we don't look at an operational thing like a signal timing at a zoning, but those are things that can be looked at any time, us and also to your Raleigh transportation that, and I'm not promising a benefit, but just want to explain kind of zoning versus kind of some of those.
Got it, and that's.
And I'm gonna finish up on that and then call on the gentleman in the sweatshirt, because I see his hand's been up. And I know you hear us say a lot, well, we don't know that yet because we have to set the site plan. The zoning has to take place before the site plan can be processed, because the city doesn't want to review plans that the council decides shouldn't go forward. But it's better for each site plan to have its own evaluation. To Callie's point, like if this takes 10 years to build out, you don't want to decide now, you know, I guess we'll just pick office here and pick office here and make improvements based on that. You want to look at the uses on the ground, the actual uses, how many of them there are, what the other traffic impacts and circulations are at that point in time in 2033, and then make recommendations based on that actual knowledge, not just kind of this overall what it could be, this 2.9 million square feet, because it could be divided up a lot of different ways. And so the city, transportation, and DOT want to see the actual plan, and they can't do that until the actual site plan goes forward, which can't happen until we get through this process. So it's not that we've got all these plans and we're holding everything back. We have to go through this legal process, and council has to decide if they want to approve this case before we're allowed to submit a building that is different than what we have today. I see you, Jared, but I'm gonna go with the gentleman here and I'll come back to you.
So I know this has been a designated growth area now for at least a couple of decades. When this gets built out in 5 or 10 years, how much more tax revenue will you generate? Because the concerns seem to be around paying for things like fire departments, what have you.
Yeah.
If you build this out, you're gonna make a lot of money for the city, correct? I mean,
Yeah.
this is gonna pay for the growth, the tax dollars we generate off of these nice buildings and off of the people who live and work in them. That generates additional revenue. What would that look like ballpark, or can you even guess?
That's a really hard question. I have to like go into Excel for a while to give that answer, but I think it's a great point because I have the same thought. Like we pay all of our development fees, which is to the tune of millions of dollars each project, and then of course taxes on our projects forever. And like that money is going to the city and to the county and should hopefully be being set aside for things like the fire station and stuff. So like that is happening, and this is gonna create even more of that over the, 5, 10+ years of development, and then the entire life cycle of the projects beyond development.
We can try to look that up. Go ahead.
Did a chart many, many years ago by way of comparison. A home generates on average, I would say about $3,000 per acre. A 6-story building and a mixed-use building generates $100,000 per acre, just by comparison. Go even higher, there's a map I worked with many, many years ago, which is floating around the city to show the value on a per acre basis. And the minute you go, when you see downtown and Midtown, it looks like it's a high rise that you would see in Manhattan on tax value is that high. So to your point, there are charts that the city put together to show the tax value on a per acre basis throughout the entire city.
I'm gonna steal that.
You saw that slide, right? I can get you actual.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Jared first, I'll come back to you then.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. So maybe I misunderstood Michael. The green space you're showing in the picture there on the right is 30,000 square feet?
Yes.
Represents it.
And how much in acreage does that translate to?
An acre is about 45,000 square feet, so it's 3/4 of an acre. For example, the Main District Expansion Plaza is about half an acre, so 22,000 square feet.
Okay, so we're talking about 3/4 of an acre of public space for AstroTurf or whatever, a couple of trees. So it's not a big space. I thought he had said, I maybe misunderstood, there's like 5 acres, but it's
No,
3/4 of
that area, the development area, where the buildings
Not all
are,
that area.
that area that's being
Okay.
rezoned.
But the 30,000 square feet is about 3/4 of an acre. Okay, correct.
But it sounds like 1.5 times what is in front of RH today.
That's 22, so yeah,
Okay.
50% more than the RH Plaza, sorry.
So it's not a huge space.
Still is 3/4 of an acre.
Second question is it fair to assume that the planning commission meeting on the 12th, and assuming it gets approved then it will go to the city council the next week for approval?
No, it doesn't get approved by the planning commission, it hasn't been scheduled for the planning commission, that is the tentative likely date that it will go to the planning commission. They will make a recommendation, then a public hearing will get scheduled before the city council, and the city council will make the final vote. We're months away from a city council vote.
So that won't happen until 2026, you think?
It's up to them when they schedule it, but it won't happen the next week. It typically takes 3 weeks after planning commission makes its recommendation to get scheduled for the hearing. And then the hearing itself usually gets scheduled for an evening session, the first meeting of the month. So wherever that ends up.
So basically, there are gonna be two more meetings to get this all approved.
There are at least 2 required public meetings that will be a part of this process.
Okay,
at
so it
least.
could be that there are 2 meetings and then this gets approved. That could be how it fleshes out.
That could be how it fleshes out. Many projects take more than that.
When's the
Okay.
planning commission meeting?
It's tentatively November 12th, but it hasn't been scheduled yet. Tentatively, yeah.
And then the last, this is more of a statement than a question, and you know where I stand on this, because I was at the meeting last week. But the Eastern is the 4th tallest building in the city. Is that correct? Based on the research I've done, that is correct. So we're gonna build 2 more buildings in North Hills that will be as tall as the Eastern. So 3 of the top 6 tallest buildings in our city, 3 of the top 6 tallest buildings in our city will be in North Hills.
That sounds accurate, and they'll also be in one of 4 places that are designated regional mixed use, and one of 7 places throughout the city or a city growth center. So this is where the city expects that growth to happen.
Right, okay, fair enough. I mean, you've heard me say it before, that typically in a city, you work outwards. You have the tallest buildings in the downtown area, and then as you grow outward, the buildings get shorter. And we're not doing that here. If we're gonna have 3 of the tallest buildings in North Hills, we're becoming another Atlanta. And that concerns me.
There's different planning.
Without a rail line.
There's different
Without a rail
planning
line.
theories of where that height should go. What is there today is already a 36-story tower, and there's, ample opportunities to make more ground floor space be attractive if we can just use that height. The difference, I think, is there's a lot downtown that's approved for 40 stories that just hasn't been built yet. And that's just a function of interest rates, the recession, costs going up 45%. We have another client that got approved in 2020 and is just now breaking down because the cost and trying to get construction financing has been so difficult. They're gonna build a 37-story tower downtown. There's lots of stuff that's approved that just hasn't gone into construction yet. And there's also some, go ahead.
I think that's also a good point about how long this takes. Like, we might get rezoning approval in 2026 and not break ground on the first building 4 to 5 years, like Jamie's other client. Like, none of this is happening tomorrow. This is a long-term future planning process as we envision how our city grows over the next 20 years and beyond. I've interrupted you.
No.
Can I make a fast comment?
Yeah.
First of all, we celebrated when the last crane disappeared in North Hills. After 3 years, the last crane finally disappeared from North Hills. We're almost to that point with North Hills Beach, almost. But so when you say 10 years in the planning, that really means that we're gonna have cranes around for 10 years with different types of development, different pieces of North Hills. The other question I really had, I wanna make sure I understand the numbers. I appreciate holding the density. Smart move. But the numbers are the same numbers that were presented in the last rezoning. So I'm assuming those numbers are based on the 12-story and 5-story numbers that were generated for North Hills prior to that? Is that correct?
That sounds
That's right.
correct, yes.
Okay.
These numbers here are from the Envision Raleigh analysis that was run in 2021 for the 12-story and 5-story zoning.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. So looking at your picture, and again, looking at when they go wide rather than tall, do you know how tall those buildings that are wider and take up more space might be?
These you mean, or?
That one, the one in the corner,
The- so
not
this-
sure.
This is just an example of what 12 stories
So
is
that's-
allowed today.
So that's representing 12,
Yes, and 5.
right? And so there is a compromise out there. You could go to 20, which would lessen the footprint of the areas that are shown as the 12, before we go all the way up to the 40s. Have you considered what it would look like if you were held at 20 stories?
We have not considered down zoning ourselves, if that's what you're asking, because that's the.
I'm not down zoning, proposing. You're at 12 now, so somewhere between 12 and where you want to be. There's a 20 in there floating around somewhere.
We've thought a lot about where the highest heights make sense as part of this rezoning case, and we've intentionally located them at the corner surrounded by other commercial uses, so the furthest away from single family neighborhoods.
Furthest away from what? I couldn't hear you.
From single family neighborhoods, at the intersection of Laster and Six Forks, where everything around you is already commercial.
I think I saw it, yes, ma'am.
So I have a couple questions. The first thing is, I'm really lucky that I figured out that y'all are having 2 open houses. So before the rezoning, I'm going to hope that there will be mailings that would go out to the entire area, as there are 2 pieces of property that I am in the area. Neither of them got any kind of a mailing from the other.
Mailings were sent for both open houses for neighbors within 1,000 square feet, which is the requirement of the second neighborhood meeting. Not 1,000 square feet, sorry, I'm 1,000 feet, if we're talking in square feet, I mean. 1,000 feet, which is the requirement for the second neighborhood meeting. We did it for the first as well, which that requirement is 500, but we wanted to make those open houses, accessible to as many people as we could.
Okay. All right, the second one's a little bit harder. So North Hills has already been remediated as a, and I'm gonna, sorry, I have to put my notes here, as a brownfield site. No doubt, if Exxon moves, they're going to have that remediation again. And I'm hearing green space, green stormwater, all of this wonder, but it was not pretty or easy the first time. How is that going to happen the second time?
That's a good question. So that process happens at the state level for brownfields, and there's a oversight by state agencies making sure that the testing is done, that the state gets to have a say on what gets to go back there. Sometimes the sites are capped, just depends on what types of things are found, if they're found. But the elements that we're talking about here, the green stormwater infrastructure, is really on the Lassiter district site. And the green kind of spaces we're talking about, to Callie's point, sometimes those can exist in kind of very shallow pans or on a structured surface. We could do things like the AstroTurf, or a lot of the amenities we're talking about are seating areas and shade areas. They don't require, soil borings and things like that. So both can exist. There are 2 different layers of regulations, the state layer for brownfields, and then what we can do under the code to make sure we comply with our zoning conditions.
And on the gas station specifically, it was, like you mentioned, remediated, I think back in the early 2000s, when the mall was redeveloped to begin with. And so a lot of the cleanup happened then. There are still underground storage tanks, that's how gas stations work. So those would need to be removed and remediated, and we would follow all of the state and city codes related to that. And then the brownfields program is really cool because it offers tax incentives to redevelop previously polluted areas, which allows you to basically afford to be able to remediate in the way that's needed. And one of the things that the brownfields program requires is vapor barriers that basically creates a barrier. First, you have to clean up the soil and you have to achieve testing that's considered safe. But then you also have to put a vapor barrier down between the soil and the first structural layer, which even further protects from any old pollutants coming out through the ground. So that would happen at any occupiable space above polluted earth.
Awesome.
You had your hand up for a long time.
I have a question about enhanced conditions on open spaces, one of which is pet relief areas.
Yes.
What about human relief areas? There's not a single public restroom at all. This, I don't want this to wait for 10 years actually. And I suggested it to Kane through an email 2 years ago. It's like, where is a public restroom?
Yeah.
The Fenton has brand new Fenton in Cary. And I went to the concierge next, and they said, oh, well, yeah, you're right, we don't need public restrooms, but some of the places will let people come in and use their restroom. I said, oh, that's great. He said, one of these five guys. I said, well, I don't wanna go into a place and say, hey, I'm using your restroom, I'm not gonna buy anything. A lot of people say, no, you can't use my restroom. And why do they post sign? If they're gonna, oh, welcome to the public, it should say, welcome to the public, restrooms open to the public. I said, you want, this is, I went to the neighborhood meeting this week.
Yeah.
For the neighbor, I love North Hills, I think it's a great development. And you guys have done a great job in many ways, but I think you failed the neighborhood in many ways. Questions like that, I have the same concerns about traffic. But, human restroom, and all these open areas, and you don't consider an enhancement would be to have a restroom that you can go into without going to a store?
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll take it under consideration. One of the challenges we've seen, I haven't seen the ones at Fitton, but I know one of the challenges with public restrooms is like safety and maintenance.
Hey, I got a suggestion. Some living wage jobs to keep the restrooms, don't have to tip people, pay people to keep the restrooms clean.
Yeah.
Put them in near the concierge, put them where the security people are. Don't tell me about safety and cleanliness and all that stuff. You have plenty of money, more than public restroom in North Hills, I believe. That's what I believe, I don't know where the finances are. As much money as you're talking about making, come on.
Well, thank you for your comment, we really appreciate it, I wanna make sure we're getting around to everyone, I think I saw a new hand over there.
Okay.
No, please, like, I'm so sorry, I forgot you, go ahead.
So,
I hear you.
I don't even go up to North Hills, I'm not your target market. And it's just too big and tall and intimidating me. But I wanna know, because you're talking about some of that traffic stuff and all that holdup that you get, because that's about, I mean, I lived here for, what is this? 35 years. And I lived just off of Sixth Forks in that section that got canceled for redevelopment. And so I watched the traffic. And I don't usually have a whole lot of problem, except right there. One thing, what is the hindrance to building a pedestrian bridge? So that those people, because you know, you're pulling up, I use that, I go down and I come up, you know, through that Midtown East and to get to Dublin. That's about all I do through there. And the stoplights, you know, you start to pull out and there's all these people crossing the street, crossing the street, crossing the street. So then you're stopped. And so you have to sit through a couple of stoplights even in order to get out. Why have nobody, you know, figured out how to put a pedestrian bridge, Midtown East, over regular Midtown, whatever, North Hills, whatever. Yeah, up and over. I mean, my little town that I grew up in, Lynchburg, Virginia, Lynchburg College, well, the university, well, whatever it is, Sheriff Hall, Liberty, University put one across their main drag. I mean, that's Route 29, they put a pedestrian bridge over it. So that their students could get from there over to Sam's and Walmart.
Yeah, yeah,
What's the problem?
it's a good question, so we did explore that a couple of years ago. Sixth Forks is controlled by DOT, so DOT would have to consent, and the amount of that type of investment would be something that the city would be possibly evaluating along with DOT.
And if I can add one other thing too, you know, yes, the ped bridge would help get a lot of folks up and over. There's still not a guarantee that the signals will be able to be retimed to remove those ped phases even with the ped bridge, because then that means we have to guarantee no one ever would cross Sixth Forks on, you know, and it's just, it wouldn't, I'm not saying it wouldn't help. I just wanted to just acknowledge that ped bridge wouldn't mean we can just rip all the ped phases out and just, it's, yeah.
But it would be, you know, because right now it's all the people who work there and they
Sure.
go over there for lunch and they walk back and they just kind of go across the street real slow because they gotta go back to work, you know? And, you know, it's, but I think that, and I feel like, you know, Kane needs to contribute to that because they are the ones that have caused the issue. And I don't see why that wouldn't be maybe a partnership between the city and the developer. Because you develop both sides of the road, you have a way to get across.
We wouldn't rule out that being a potential future partnership, it just, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It just won't be a condition of this case. But it's something that we would welcome discussing, with the city, including the future fire plans and all that kind of thing. Some of these things just don't lend themselves to zoning conditions, especially zoning conditions where you've capped yourself, at basically half of what we asked for last time. So we have to weigh that and what can be, born out of this project, and what can be afforded, and that's just not one of them. That's something we welcome discussing with the city in the future.
Can I take one last question?
Yes, sir.
Getting back to the building on Rowan. So looking at the picture, it looks like it's been drawn covering the site where the post office, the fire station is, and going into and covering that grassy area in the L shape of the Alexan apartments.
These are all just conceptual, nothing is designed yet. We're certainly not covering the fire station, we don't own that property. You probably can't see it super well. It's like the fire station is like just behind what's shown as this wing here, but this is conceptual, it's not like a real building.
But it looks like it will take up that grassy space.
It could.
In the,
There's the fire station and parcel, and then this is what we're.
So it could, that land is owned by Kane, but if it did, it would have to meet code requirements of distance between buildings. And again, we care about this development, we care about the open space, so like that would be a consideration. We're not gonna build right up against it.
I know that, but I wanna point out, when Lassiter was still fairly new, I know a couple or three of the business owners there, and they were very concerned there wasn't enough parking, and it wasn't good enough to tell people, oh, well, go on the other side of Lassiter Mill and park in the parking deck and walk back over here. Their patrons did not want to do that. So the area between the grassy space and the dry cleaner was paved, and 50 parking spaces were created to help alleviate that shortage of parking for the businesses in the Lassiter. And I think, the way that it's drawn there, that parcel includes that 50 space lot that was paved to enable the businesses to survive. And if that's going to be covered over, I hope that you can make accommodations for that with 50 additional spaces in the building. But then that brings me back to, I've been here thinking about, we've got to address the loading dock, parking, egress, and going in and out, and the dumpster, because that if it is built facing Rowan, chaos is going to result. The parents of the students that attend St. Timothy's, as well as the residents on Gates and Sampson and Pamlico and Rowan, are going to be absolutely enraged. You cannot put all that business end of the building facing that street. And I don't know how you're gonna fit it in facing Lassiter parking lots that exist right now.
Yeah, so just again, the drawings you see are all conceptual, nothing is designed yet. We'll take all this into consideration.
I know, we're.
Yes, I just want you to bust a myth for me.
Oh.
So to bust, this is a myth buster. Tax addition. Is there any city, town, county, state, country where this level of density development, the revenue that comes from it, has ever relieved the tax burden from those people who live around it? No, it has never happened, right?
I don't think we can say never. There's lots of different programs to make that happen. The city just adopted a new tool for special projects that can do that, but they all they have different ways of being implemented. So, and not all of them have been implemented in North Carolina historically. Our new treasurer has some different tools that are now available. But that's a city council decision, not an individual applicant decision.
It's part of the reason your property taxes didn't go up last year.
Yours
Your
did?
property taxes did not go up.
Not,
What do you
Well,
like?
again, I hear
Cary just raised taxes because they don't have any of this. That's why Cary's taxes are going up more than ours.
Cary has the Fenton mill.
One.
Hey,
We have all downtown.
We'll have a tax discussion, I promise. Why it all goes out of the town, we'll have a discussion. I wanna try to bring this to a close. Mitchell's here, I know Mitchell probably has things to say while he's here. Appreciate you being here. And I wanna thank people who came to explain everything to us tonight. And I hope that everybody got their questions answered. Probably if the one ever gets to the planning commission, it'll open the door for many more questions, which we'll probably address at another meeting. And hopefully have the time to do that before it gets to council. The question's gonna be whether it gets to council before or after they take their holiday break. So just throwing that out. And my trip to Florida.
More important.
So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You guys have a contact sheet or anything? I have it all.
Sign it? Yeah.
I forgot to bring, I forgot to bring my contact.
I have yours.
Yeah, we have like most of you guys.
Pleasure.
I can drop them off.
Yeah.
Please. You want me to?
Mitchell, the floor is yours.
Yeah, all right. It's a long day, so I'll just be very brief. I have 3 updates. I first want to acknowledge my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Stormy Ford is here. So thank you for coming out to District A. Oh, I didn't know I was facing this way. Okay, so I heard.
You skipped down.
Okay, Councilor Pat was here. I just have 3 quick updates. I'm here to listen. This is coming before us. We don't know when, but it's probably gonna be sometime in 2026. So I want to thank you all for sharing some of your questions. 3 updates. Number 1, I actually worked with the mayor, something when I came in office, people complain about people who are panhandling or at least asking for money on our medians. Council passed an ordinance that now restricts anyone from asking for money in our medians that are less than 6 feet. And that's primarily Strickland and Six Forks is one location, Capitol Boulevard. And so that goes into effect actually November 1st. So it's gonna happen this weekend. Signs are going up. We're very concerned about how dangerous it is where people are on some medians, basically concrete of about 1 foot. So the signs are going up and then the RPD will be able to enforce it. So that's something with my colleague that we passed that goes into effect. The other one you probably heard, there is now a new noise ordinance. We had a consultant out of Austin, Texas. We had tried rather than reasonable person measure. There's now going to be noise meters. The city's gonna hire 4 civilians. There'll be a downtown district and then we'll look for some other citywide. That goes into effect January 1st. So we just passed that last week. And so we'll be looking at how it's now gonna be measured. Very complicated about where they measure it. But we're very hopeful that this will now address the problems citywide, particularly in areas where there's a lot of nightlife and outdoor entertainment. The last one is we heard a lot from residents about digital billboards. And after hearing that in committee, we decided just to put that to bed. When it was brought to our attention, we thought we would be able to reduce the number of billboards citywide with digital. That was not the case. And so we unanimously said we put that one to the side. My understanding is last Friday, the industry who brought us the proposal got their briefing about why we could not go forward. Plus, we have a lot of limitations from the state. And so that is another item that now has been put aside. So those are my 3 updates. I'm having my District A committee meeting this Wednesday at the oh my goodness, why is it late? Ann Gordon Center from 6 to 7. So if you want to have a more one-on-one conversation, I just give a few updates and then I listen to residents. So that's this Wednesday, October 29th, from again 6 to 7. And unless there are any questions, I will turn it back over to the chair.
Just a clarification, it's not gonna be where you had your last town hall.
No, it is not. We tried to get the same place, Millbrook Exchange. I think they're going through some HVAC renovations, and so it's gonna be at the senior center. I haven't been there, so I'll see it for the
When
first
you
time.
pull in, it's right to the right, it's right to the front of the road.
So I guess I'll be right back here in a couple of days, so.
You're talking about city noise, you said that this is gonna be street noise too?
No, this is the noise ordinance. This is buildings amplified music. This is separate from events the city holds. These are nightclubs, any place that has amplified music. There are now new requirements about, now they'll have measures. There's two measures, one of the treble, one of the bass, the one that kind of vibrates. And so there's different measures for each. And so now there's a whole new approach. The city hired an expert out of Austin. They had a noise ordinance, went through a couple of conversations, we made some adjustments, and that will now go into effect January 1st. Until then, the old rules will stay in place until January 1st.
This will apply citywide.
It will apply citywide, but there are specific areas. There's the downtown zone around Glenwood, and so the ordinance has different measurements to where, but you know, in terms of how those experts will measure. But the epicenter is going to be the downtown area. Yes.
At our meeting last month, a couple of people were asking the police representative about vehicle noise and what could be done to control that. So will this noise ordinance apply?
There is a separate, and then Mayor Pro Tem, there's a separate group that's trying to clamp down on the motorcycles, the engines. And so that is a separate effort outside of the noise ordinance. This is specifically focused on establishments that have amplified music. They have a separate task force dealing with what's happening in various parts of the city with people, loud motorcycles, loud engines. That is a separate effort. Yes.
Just to piggyback on tonight's presentation, because I think the pedestrian thing, I think it is a very important issue. When you go to large cities like New York City, where there's a ton of density, most of their streets are one way. And it's only 2 or 3 at a time, where you have 6 forks, you're crossing over 6 lanes, turning left, turning right, different cycles, different this. So I do think in whatever happens in North Hills moving forward, I think that a good pedestrian 6 forks angle should be taken, because I do think that, you know, the kids at Carroll, the kids at St. Timothy's are gonna keep going to North Hills.
I hear you, yes.
You know, I do think that should be a strong perspective, especially from our District A, that we should really put our foot down and make sure that the culture that those kids have, we can maintain that safely, whether it's going under 6 Forks or it's broadening the walkway. And I live off of 6 Forks, and the idea of making more pedestrians irritates me, but I think it's the safest thing to do.
I support it, and again, I'm trying not to put on my planning hat on, but there's no question, there was a gentleman that was very concerned about the walkability of North Hills, and we walked the entire district. I've been an advocate, and I'm sure Mayor Pro Tem will tell you, that if we truly want to get serious about bicycle pedestrian, I don't think the city's doing as much as they can with some of the pedestrian crossings. Many places you walk don't even have a stripe for cars to stop. Some just have a narrow 5-foot width that's double striped. Some have stripes across. I do believe we can do a lot better job. I've already shared that with the city manager, Department of Transportation. And so that is something I agree with. Out of working in New York, there are refuges that they have where medians are wider. 6 Forks is very wide to go across, 6, 7 lanes. And very often for people, particularly who are senior, you've got to walk pretty fast to get from one side to the other. If you look at Broadway, you look at some major streets, there is a refuge that is protected that allows people to stop so they don't get caught in traffic. So I agree with you. We need a lot better pedestrian experience. To me, it's not just on paper. I'm a walker. I walk every morning, and even in my area off of 6 Forks, I've already shared some concerns about things that need to be improved. So the answer is yes, yes, and yes.
And they have those safety zones on Strickland Road. And why they don't do it throughout the rest of the city, I don't know.
Well, that is a conversation I already had with the transportation. I've already noted it. They had mentioned, you know, that's why we pushed for the improvement right in front of the school, just north of North Hills. There was the only missing gap of a sidewalk. And so I certainly believe we need to do a lot better job on having our pedestrian network, sidewalks, crosswalks, and even a refuge on larger streets so people can sit there and wait, so long as they don't ask for money.
I mean, I think, you know, I've lived here for quite a while and I don't see anything improving, but things just coming in. And I mean, what comes to mind is when we had the shooting here, it was gridlock for hours. You couldn't move anywhere. And I don't see any plans. Obviously, we can't build more roads, but I think you have to address the more people, the more incidents. And they shut down pretty much from Costco all the way down here to Millbrook. And I couldn't get out. I was at the gym and the whole area here is not organized. One company said you could go out and other people locked you in. I don't.
Well, look, in the
to
case,
address
yeah,
with
yeah.
the density of people coming in, I haven't seen any improvement in a crisis situation, which we did experience that, and it was dreadful.
I hear you. We do not have a connected grid like most cities do.
Downtown does.
Downtown does, but
Yes.
that was, if you look how the city evolved, it started with a grid, and then over time, went to a suburban type development, which was arterials, cul-de-sacs, and so it's different. I was here when he had that mini storm, but the entire region iced up. I just passed the fire on Glenwood Avenue, because that's the route I took, and we were gridlocked because of our street network. That's what it is, and that's not going to change. So in a crisis, it's going to be a concern. It happened, I was stuck in Durham the day they had an active shooter in the South Point Mall. I just happened to be visiting and we were stuck the day after Thanksgiving. Same thing, getting out of the South Point Mall took us over 2 hours to get out. So in the case of an emergency, that's going to happen. But for the most part, the area flows pretty well. I take Six Forks every day, and the biggest gridlock to me is Six Forks and Millbrook. That is where the gridlock is. Once I pass Millbrook, I pretty much go straight through to go to even downtown.
440,
Yeah.
getting off of 440, getting
So
off.
the thing is that we're always looking to improve. I hate to scare you, but the truth is, by 2050, Raleigh's gonna add another 200 to 250,000
But we're
people.
not doing
And so our
anything.
goal is to make sure with the new comprehensive plan that we plan for it the best way that we can. But that's reality that we're dealing with. And so.
But you're just
By what
letting
year
them
was
come
that,
and
you
not
said?
making.
Excuse me?
By 2050, is that?
By 2050, we're expecting roughly about another 200, up to 250,000 people by 2050.
Well, I don't have to worry about that.
Excuse me?
I'm glad I don't have to worry about
We do. We do, yes.
Quick question, so I have a feeling that most of the people around here are aware, like they're seeing it. The new entry into the vehicular arena around North Hills is golf carts.
Yes.
They are beginning to be a problem.
Oh, yeah, golf carts.
And
You
that's
mean the
going to-
North Hills management?
No, I mean the North Hills area, the neighborhood and they're driving them up to North Hills.
Yes.
So, I mean, and right now.
I don't have an answer for that. That one is, I've seen them, but if you live here, I mean, I see them when I visit. I don't know how much of a problem it is. So that's a new one. Have you heard about that? I haven't heard that before.
There's some with drum rims and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I can speak it because I'm an advocate for neighborhood karting. I think that we should be able to neighborhood kart. But there are two different, there's like the mini car that hits a weight limit that you get a license plate for, and you, like, so you can do that. I'm an advocate for like a $1,500 go-kart, because you should be able to have something cheap.
Right.
If the kids can go 40 miles an hour on an electric bike, you should go 25 miles an hour on a little car.
Brand new. I will keep my ears and eyes open for that one. Have heard it.
Yeah, we got it over,
Yeah.
I live right over there, in Northland, Lake Mount Northland area, and there are 2 or 3 golf carts there that goes.
Cops don't live because the convicts
And
don't
I've
think they get a
seen
DUI driving, but they can.
Yeah, so just by way of comparison, if some of you don't know, I was formerly the plan director, so when I was looking at that presentation, I'm the one that kind of came up with the growth center in the Midtown and the downtown, so if you want to get upset at someone, but when I got here, from then till now, we predicted we would add close to 170,000 people, close to 200, and we did. And we did. And we had to figure out how to put them in dense locations. And a recommendation of those growth centers that Jamie was talking about, we said that 70% of our growth should go in those growth centers. And when we look back, it turned out that 70% of our growth was in those growth centers to make sure we protected all the lower density neighborhoods. So we're about to embark on the same effort for 2050. And so that's kind of the background about these growth centers in urban form, is that we have to figure out how to manage this growth. You can't say no, people have a right to develop their property, a constitutional right, you can't say no. And so we have to figure out how we accommodate that growth. And so that's gonna be the challenge. You'll hear more about the comprehensive plan over the coming months, but that's something you certainly need to pay attention to because it's gonna talk about where we're gonna grow and how next.
But they haven't even built up to the 12 stories that they could do now. And we're talking about going to 27, 37, I mean.
Yes, the plan calls for that. Yeah,
More than they have now.
The plan calls for up to the 3 million square feet or 2.9. So the question is how you mold that clay. You can have it short and flat, or you can squeeze it taller, which creates more open spaces. So it's a choice. The 2.9 is gonna come. Either have it squished down, or you mold it where you have this wonderful open space in between. It's your choice to weigh in, the planning commission to give advice, and the city council to ultimately make the final decision.
Yeah, what percentage of the buildings, the high rises they built are occupied? And there's so many.
I don't know that.
buildings.
Callie left, I don't know that answer.
That's a good question.
I don't know.
Oh, she said 60%, and the rest is planned.
I really have to.
Yeah.
All right, so unless there's anything else for me, I'll see some of you on Wednesday.
I have just one more tiny thing.
One more tiny thing.
In the south side of Raleigh, like heading out Dawson and McDowell,
Yes,
it looks to me like that'd be a great place to start developing.
it is. It's called, so one last point. The question was, why are we building so much in Midtown and not downtown, where that should be the tallest? When I was plan director, downtown wasn't big enough for a city this size. $500,000, downtown, I call it penny in a pot. If you look at most downtowns, it's much larger. Downtown Raleigh was so tiny, so I recommended that we should do downtown south, which is now going down South Saunders, and it got rezoned, and downtown north, which is going up Capitol Boulevard, because you can't go east because of low density historic neighborhoods. You really can't go west because you have Boylan. You could either go south or you go north. And so it wasn't big enough to accommodate the growth. And that's when we said we need other growth centers so it takes pressure off of downtown. So there's the Lenovo Center, West Raleigh, Briar Creek, Triangle Town Center, which would really benefit from a major mixed-use makeover. And so we identified all these locations throughout the city because downtown just wasn't big enough. There was nowhere to grow out. So theoretically, yes, your downtown should have the highest density, but we looked at Midtown, we looked at downtown, downtown South, West Raleigh, Briar Creek, Triangle Town Center, and around Wake Met. Those were some of the growth centers we're hoping would densify so we can keep all the neighborhoods protected, low density, great neighborhoods that people love.
Just in Peace and Westlake, so it sounds like we're not sharing, right? I mean,
That's
all
why
parts of the
downtown
city-
north.
Yeah, I mean, all parts of the city are.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you
I've
all.
got it. I've got to close this up. The rec people will really get upset very shortly already, so. Stormy, thanks for coming and visiting with us anytime.
Thank you.
Sure. You guys